Since the early 1900s and into recent history, there have been wars, difficult times, and great leaders who have led the United States. Starting in 1914, many countries in Europe and other places were fighting in World War I. In 1917, German submarines attacked American ships. Woodrow Wilson, the U.S. President, decided the United States had to join the fight in World War I. In 1917, 2 million American soldiers went to France to help end World War I. President Woodrow Wilson was the leader of the United States during World War I. Difficult economic times started in 1929 when the Great Depression began. This was a time of a very weak economy in the U.S. and other parts of the world. People lost their jobs, their farms, and homes. Some people had no money or food. Franklin Roosevelt was the president during the Depression. He tried to fix the banks and the economy. He helped Americans during the Depression with government programs. President Roosevelt was also the leader of the United States during World War II. In World War II, the United States fought Germany, Italy, and Japan. General Eisenhower helped the U.S. to win World War II. He was a general and famous war hero in the war. He became president in 1952. After his work as a general in World War II. The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union began after World War II. The Cold War was not a traditional war. It was cold because the U.S. and the Soviet Union did not fight each other directly. The Soviet Union was a communist country. Communism is an economic system where most property belongs to the government. The United States did not want communism to begin in other countries. The U.S. fought the Korean War and the Vietnam War to try to stop communism. Communism was the main concern of the U.S. during the Cold War. The United States has a capitalist economy, where property belongs to individuals, not the government. In a capitalist economy, businesses decide what they want to sell and how much money a product costs. Then, the people decide what they want to buy. The United States has a capitalist economy. People work hard in a capitalist economy. Hard-working men and women in American industry are responsible for the high standard of living we all enjoy. Labor Day is a national holiday that celebrates the American workers. Labor Day is in September. During the 1900s, the United States fought in 5 wars: World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Gulf War. On September 11, 2001, terrorists attacked the United States. Many Americans died. After this attack in 2001, the U.S. began a war on terror. The 9/11 terrorist attack was a major event in modern American history. Many brave soldiers have served their country and fought in wars since the early 1900s. Veterans Day, a national holiday, began as a day to honor World War I American soldiers. Today, we honor all American soldiers, alive or dead, on this day. Veterans Day is a national holiday in November. There have been many major events in the United States since the 1900s. The country had difficult economic times, fought in many wars, and had some very strong leaders and presidents. Through it all, Americans have remained united as a country that believes in freedom for all people. To start learning English free and to prepare to become a U.S. citizen, go to usalearns.org and select the Start Now button. By the beginning of the 1800s, the United States had grown from the original 13 states to 16 states. But the country wanted more land to become larger. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson bought the Louisiana Territory from France for $15 million. This territory doubled the size of the United States. Many Americans traveled into this land and continued traveling farther west. As the country grew, its problems grew too. The northern states and the southern states disagreed about many things. One big disagreement was slavery. Millions of Africans were taken to America and sold as slaves. People in the South owned most of the slaves. People in the South had large farms, and most slaves worked on the land. The South believed slavery was necessary for their economy and daily life. The South believed in states' rights. They believed each state should have the right to keep slavery legal. But many people in the North wanted to stop slavery in the whole country. What led to the Civil War? 3 main disagreements between the North and the South led to the Civil War. The problems were slavery, economic issues, and states' rights. The Civil War began in 1861. This was a war between the states in the North and the states in the South. The Southern states did not want to be part of the United States anymore. They decided to become independent and started their own country called the Confederate States of America. The North wanted to keep all the states together and preserve the country. Abraham Lincoln became the president in 1861, just before the start of the Civil War. Lincoln led the country during the war, and he worked to keep the country together. Many people say that Lincoln preserved the Union. Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 during the Civil War. It said that the slaves in the southern states were free. The North won the war, and the South became part of the U.S. again. More American soldiers died in the Civil War than in any other war. Memorial Day is a national holiday to honor all the soldiers who have died in wars to protect this country. During the 1800s, the United States fought in 4 wars. The War of 1812, which occurred from 1812 to 1815. The Mexican-American War, from 1846 to 1848. The Civil War, from 1861 to 1865. And the Spanish-American War, from April 1898 to August 1898. In the War of 1812, the United States fought the British again. An American man named Francis Scott Key watched the bombs explode one night during this war. He then wrote a song called "The Star-Spangled Banner" to describe the American flag. This song is now the national anthem of the United States.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed?
To start learning English free and to prepare to become a U.S. citizen, go to usalearns.org and select the Start Now button. In the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson wrote that all men are created equal. But not all groups of people have always had equal rights in the United States. When the Constitution was written in 1787, only white men had the right to vote. Other people have had to fight for the right to vote and for civil rights. Many groups of people have organized, marched, protested, and petitioned to change the laws. They used their First Amendment rights, including the freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and the right to petition the government. There are now 4 different amendments to the Constitution, allowing more people to vote. The 15th Amendment was added to the Constitution in 1870, after the Civil War and the end of slavery. This amendment said that men of any race could vote. Women, however, were not allowed to vote. As early as the 1850s, Susan B. Anthony, a leader in the women's rights movement, started working for women's rights and civil rights. Susan B. Anthony organized meetings and protests to support women's education and equality. She asked the government to give voting rights to women. It took more than 70 years for women to get the right to vote. In 1920, a constitutional amendment was added to allow women to vote. Susan B. Anthony is one of the leaders who fought for this important right for women. At this point, the Constitution said that men and women of any race could vote. But in many places, African Americans still did not have equal rights. Because of a long history of racial discrimination, American society was segregated or separated by race. African Americans had to go to separate schools and had to sit in separate places on a bus or drink from different drinking fountains. They were often not allowed to vote. To stop this racial discrimination, people started to organize and join the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King Jr. became a leader in the civil rights movement to end racial discrimination. Starting in the 1950s, he fought for equality for African Americans and other people of color. Martin Luther King Jr. gave public speeches, wrote letters to newspapers, and organized nonviolent protests to change laws and change people's opinions. He fought for equality and civil rights. Because of King's leadership and the work of many people in the civil rights movement, the laws finally changed. In 1964 and 1965, the government passed the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. These laws protected voting rights and ended legal discrimination. King was assassinated in 1968. Each year in January, we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day to honor him for his fight for civil rights and equality for all Americans. There are 2 other constitutional amendments about voting. In 1964, an amendment was added to say that people don't have to pay a tax to vote. In 1971, the voting age changed to 18 so that younger people can vote. Today, any citizen over the age of 18, male or female, of any race, can vote. These changes to our government and our society did not happen easily. Through the years, many people have fought for equality and our right to vote. To start learning English free and to prepare to become a U.S. citizen, go to usalearns.org and select the Start Now button. The Founding Fathers of the United States wrote the Constitution to set up the federal government. The Constitution defines the government and says how it works. The authors of the Constitution divided the federal government into three branches: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. Each branch has different powers so that no one person or group has too much control, like a king has. This is called separation of powers. Each branch of the government has a special job. The legislative branch is Congress. Congress writes, debates, and makes laws. The executive branch enforces the laws. The President leads the executive branch. The judicial branch decides if laws follow the Constitution. They also decide if people break laws. In the United States, everyone must follow the law. Nobody is above the law, including government officials. The rule of law means that everyone must follow the law. By separating the powers of the three branches, the Constitution created a system of checks and balances. Each branch has the power to control some things in the other branches. This way, no branch becomes too powerful. The Constitution also does not allow the federal government to have too much power over the states. The Constitution lists the powers of the federal government. The federal government has the power to print money. It can also declare war, create an army, and make treaties. States' rights were very important to the Founding Fathers, so state governments also have the power to do many things. States provide schooling and education. State and local governments provide protection and safety through police and fire departments. States also give driver's licenses and approve zoning and land use. The Constitution's first three words are, "We the people." In a government by the people, citizens vote for people to represent them in local, state, and federal positions. Citizens want to choose representatives who share their ideas about the way the country should be governed. Political parties work to educate citizens about the issues and help their candidates win elections. The two major political parties in the United States are the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. The Constitution makes sure that our government is truly run by the people and for the people. It also makes sure power is shared by different branches of government at both state and federal levels. To start learning English free and to prepare to become a U.S. citizen, go to usalearns.org and select the Start Now button. As our country has grown and changed over time, the Constitution has also needed to change. When the Constitution was written in 1787, some representatives believed that it did not strongly protect the rights of the people. So, a few years later, Congress agreed to make important changes to the Constitution. Changes to the Constitution are called amendments. In 1791, Congress added 10 important amendments. These 10 amendments are called the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights defines some basic rights of people in the U.S. and limits government power. The First Amendment of the Bill of Rights is very important. The First Amendment protects some of the most basic liberties for everyone living in the United States. Some First Amendment rights are freedom of speech. We are free to think and say what we believe, even if we disagree with the government. People can talk freely about ideas. Freedom of religion. People can practice any religion or choose not to practice a religion. Different religions are part of American life. Freedom of the press. We may explain our ideas in newspapers, magazines, books, radio, TV, and Internet. These cannot be controlled by the government. Over the years, more amendments were added. Today, the Constitution has 27 amendments. The last one was added recently, in 1992. 4 amendments were added to give more people the right to vote. The 15th Amendment gave people of any race the right to vote. The 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote. The 24th Amendment said it was illegal to make people pay a tax to vote. Finally, the 26th Amendment gave 18-year-olds the right to vote. The first 10 amendments are called the Bill of Rights. These and all the other amendments of the Constitution protect the rights of the people and help define the government of the United States. To start learning English free and to prepare to become a U.S. citizen, go to usalearns.org and select the Start Now button. The executive branch, one of the 3 branches of government, is the part of government that makes sure the laws are followed. The President is the person in charge of the executive branch. As the leader of the executive branch, the President has many responsibilities. The President is responsible for signing bills into new laws. Before a law is official, it is called a bill. Members of Congress write and vote on the bill. Next, the President signs the bill and it becomes a law. The President signs bills to become laws. The President can also stop a bill from becoming a law. This is called a veto. If the President doesn't like a bill, he can say no. He can refuse to sign it. The President vetoes bills. The President is the leader or the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military. The military is the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. All military generals report to and take orders from the President. The Vice President helps the President. If something happens to the President, the Vice President becomes the new President. This happened when Vice President Lyndon Johnson became President after President John Kennedy was killed in 1963. The President chooses a group of people who help run the government. This group is called a cabinet. The Vice President and 15 people are on the President's cabinet. The President's cabinet advises the President. The people on the cabinet are the Vice President and the heads of 15 government departments, such as Defense, Education, Transportation, Health and Human Services. One very important cabinet-level position is Secretary of State. The Secretary of State helps the President work with other countries. Another important cabinet-level position is the Secretary of Labor. The Secretary of Labor advises the President about jobs and American workers. The President lives and works in the White House in Washington, D.C. We elect a President for 4 years. There is a presidential election in the month of November every 4 years. Only U.S. citizens can vote for the President, the person in charge of the executive branch of the U.S. government. When you are a U.S. citizen, you will have the special right to vote. You will be able to help decide who is president. To start learning English free and to prepare to become a U.S. citizen, go to usalearns.org and select the Start Now button. The U.S. federal government has three main branches. The legislative branch, also called Congress, makes laws. Members of Congress introduce new ideas for laws, discuss the ideas, and vote on them. These are called bills. Congress then sends the bill to the President to sign. When the President signs a bill, it becomes a law. Congress has two parts, the Senate and the House of Representatives. There are 100 senators in the Senate. Each of the 50 states has 2 senators. A U.S. senator represents all the people in his or her state. Every 6 years, we vote for our senators. A senator serves for 6 years and then must be re-elected. There is no limit to the number of times a senator can be elected. In the House of Representatives, there are 435 voting members. Each state has a different number of representatives depending on the population of that state. For example, California has a large population, so it has 53 representatives. However, Alaska has a much smaller population, so it has only 1 representative. Every 2 years, we vote for our representatives. We call the person we elect our representative, or congressman or congresswoman. A U.S. representative serves for 2 years and then must be re-elected. There is no limit to the number of times a U.S. representative can be elected. It's important to know who your representatives are. The Speaker of the House is the leader of the House of Representatives. If both the President and Vice President can no longer serve, the Speaker of the House of Representatives will become the next President of the United States. This has never happened before. Senators and House representatives in Congress represent the people of their state. As a citizen, you can elect people in your state who will represent you in Washington, D.C. They represent you, your state, and your community when they serve in Congress. To start learning English free and to prepare to become a U.S. citizen, go to usalearns.org and select the Start Now button.